Welcome back to The Circle. Today we're joined by Steve Azar. He's a real estate entrepreneur and environmental engineer whose career spans multi-million-dollar redevelopment projects and purpose-driven work. From creating sustainable, inclusive housing to reimagining Provincetown's iconic Gifford House, Steve brings intention and heart to everything he does. We'll explore how his spiritual practices and his experience with men's work have shaped his ability to lead boldly and stay grounded. Tim, Steve, are you ready to go all in?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
All right. So, Steve, you've tackled some very ambitious projects over the years. Could you give us a quick overview of some of the major ones, like the Gifford House, and share how you've managed to balance the pressures and complexities of taking on such big challenges?
Great questions. I've worked in a variety of different fields over the years, from city planning to engineering to redevelopment projects. In the background, I've always had a brokerage license, and I've always been sort of taking on personal projects, whether it's the home I'm living in and flipping or whatever, very typical of gay people. Always with an eye for design. But the projects spanned from infrastructure redevelopment projects, which had to do with, expanding channels and actually taking properties by eminent domain from some folks who was difficult to displace, and other projects like developing high-rises communities for folks and really focusing on the functionality and the amenities that come with that. But the common thread from regardless of what project I've worked on is really sort of what's at the heart of the project and how it works and how it impacts people. And so, moving through any of those projects, I'm always sort of holding on to that thread of not necessarily the bottom line, but how to best create space and communities that use that space is sort of what I do.
So part of what I just heard you say was, there's a word that I love, impact. So with the projects that you're doing in town now, what is the impact that you ultimately want to have in this community?
It's the whole reason why I took on the project, to be honest.
Yeah,
I mean, really, there were a million projects that I could have done after leaving, selling the stowaway to the Summer of Sass. And probably the only real reason why I ended up getting to the point of actually moving forward with a sale, because I didn't want it to just go to anybody. I really wanted the next step of it to be correct. Was Summer of Sass moved in, and they said that it could help, upwards of 30 kids a year. And that to me was the right move. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what was next for me, but I listened for universal clues a little bit, not to get too woo on anyone, but as soon as something feels aligned or correct, even if I don't know what the next step is, I often will just surrender to whatever that is. And so, once they moved in, that was actually the moment of, oh no, I really don't know what's next. And even though I can talk this great game or, I have these beliefs, I'm scared because there's a finite amount of money that will come from this. Inflation is going through the roof, happens to be right in this moment. The dollar amount that I already said yes to is deflating by the minute. And worse, I had 45 days to identify my next project. For tax reasons. I was doing a 1031 tax exchange. And so I looked all around the country, projects everywhere, and identified up 3. And all 3 of those projects fell apart within the 45 days for a variety of reasons. There was a random burial site on one of them, and the bank didn't feel comfortable. Like, just random stuff that I couldn't foresee, and I was pushing the energy and pushing it and forcing it because I did not want to lose tax money, because this is what I do, real estate. So if I'm not doing real estate, what am I, And so it was like day 43, and I was walking by the Gifford House, and I was actually saying goodbye to everybody and packing my bag, and I was it sounds crazy, but I was like thinking I was just going to go to an Indian ashram and just sit for like 6 months and just really sit with myself and really sit with what just happened. Like, I just gave up my whole life, blew it up, probably leaving the community that I love, trying to understand what I just did for these kids, right? And still being very okay with it, but trying not to understand why the universe kind of like didn't step in, right? And it was day 43, and I was raw, and I looked up, and the owner was there, and I just said, hey, it's this older gentleman. He was in his early 70s or somewhere about, and I said, do you own this? And he's like, yes. And I said, what are you doing? And the club was closed. The bar was half closed. The hotel was mostly closed. This was one of the places that made me fall in love with town, right? I mean, it truly had a heartbeat to it that's unmistakable and just sort of beautiful in its own authenticity, right? It's never trying to be anything that it really isn't. And that's what I loved about it. And so I just sort of looked at him, and I, from like my deepest truth, said, I just sold something in town, a business that I loved, that I had just created, where I was trying to grow community. I had started an artist residency. 2020 had happened during that period. I was, trying to create all kinds of little micro events for the community to sustain itself, whether it be through markets where they were 6 feet apart or whatever else. I was constantly pushing, trying to create that. And everyone kept saying, you're in the wrong place in town for this. Go somewhere else, which for me was like ultimate rejection. And as a queer person, rejection is like not it, right? And so I thought, well, I guess the town doesn't want me. But then when I was having this conversation with the then owner of the Gifford House, I said, often these buildings have purpose that are outside of us, and we are stewards of them. And if you're not giving the full potential to this property in a town where the vibrations are a lot bigger than you or me or anything, it's about a whole larger community, then it's time to step aside, and the story goes on where I just kind of, I offered him, I said, you're probably scared to sell. You probably don't even know how, and I said, it's really complicated. I said, what we're going to do is get you a lawyer. I'm going to get a lawyer, except it's going to be you and me at the table. And at the end of this thing, you and me are going to be really good friends, and you're going to sit at the bar, and you're going to go to the shows, and this is still your building too. Because I'm just going to be a steward like you were a steward, and we're going to do it for the community, and this is the time. And he looked at me and he goes, you remind me a lot of myself at your age.
Mm-hmm. So what I heard you say there was a lot about building community. So when we talk about impact, it sounds like that was partly what you did when you made the sale that you mentioned. And then part of the reason why you decided to buy the Gifford House was so that you could continue to create community. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, I think I've done a lot of work in my own journey, from embodiment to everything, and I've really sat with what makes me tick and where I want to be. So I did all these redevelopment projects. I built high rises, which was my ultimate goal. I had reached a level of director, which was my ultimate goal. Equity, I had done my own side projects, and I kind of got there at a relatively young age, right? And in a world where my dad wasn't the CEO, right? And so I like had to fight from New Bedford. Mom was a school teacher, dad was a social worker, and this little brown boy is like going through white society, trying to make his own name, and did, essentially, right? To some degree. And once I kind of got there, it was evident that it didn't speak to my heart. And so I went on this whole thing of, and that's why for every project, what I said before is I was trying to constantly try to find the heart in every project. How am I benefiting community? How am I benefiting people? Am I giving a positive vibration out? Is my work meaningful? It matters to me. And so I'm a Cancer. I don't know. I just have a heart, and the heart needs to just do what it does, right? And so I started writing, and I started writing the purpose that I wanted. When I was at the Stowaway, I did ayahuasca. I had all kinds of breakthroughs, right? Like a lot of people go through. And what kept coming up for me and my purpose, different from everybody else, and no purpose better or worse than anything, was I would look around at the world, and I simply don't comprehend, I don't understand why people are mean and judge other people. I don't understand why we aren't in full support of people's authenticity. I don't understand why certain people think power comes from holding other people down. Like there's just like, it just in my psyche doesn't add up, right? It's because my heart is not wired that way at all. And so I said, I would love to hold space somehow for people's true, authentic expression to appear and for them to know they are loved for who they are, as they are, and that's it. And otherwise, it's a vibration of joy, right? It's like, just come, have a good time, get up on a stage. You don't have to drink. You don't have to do drugs. There's no expectations of you. Other people might be doing all kinds of things in any kind of way. It's humanity. Let humanity bud and grow. Let's all see each other for who we are. And that's it. It's not that much more complicated than that. I don't want to make it some grandiose other thing. I just want to hold space for truth and for people's authenticity. And so I kept writing it. And I was like, I don't know what that looks like, but I think there needs to be a stage, I don't know, but I think this, and I would just keep writing it. And I was like, I've never owned a theater. I've never owned a stage or even a bar or a club for that matter. I had no idea, but I did know that the truth and sort of the string of it is the Gifford House. Like it way before me. I have nothing to do with it. It's like it's existed on this property. And it's why I've always been attracted to this property. I never thought I could afford to do a project like this. I never thought, now mind you, the banks had rejected 3 other projects before me that were a quarter of this size. I ended up I met the 45-day window. I went to the bank and it was greenlit in record time in a way that I didn't understand. Like I literally just, I was like, you sure? They were like, Steve, you put a business plan together we've never seen. We believe in you. We're going to take a risk with you. I've never heard a bank say they would take a risk, period. Mm-hmm. Never mind with, and I don't have backers, like it was literally, they believed in me. I believed in them. We all did it. And so far so good. So it's been really good.
It really speaks to me with the power of the heart. When you do things from the heart and you are leading from the heart, like how the universe will conspire to help you. And all the way to like my jaw, like to anyone watching, you just saw my jaw drop when you said how fast that moved. I mean, you were at like, I was here on the seat of like the edge of my seat being like, oh my gosh, is he actually going to be able to do this? And I know how the story ends, and I was still captivated. I was like, oh my God, is he actually going to be able to do this? He's got 2 days left.
Same.
And within a matter of days, this incredible project comes to fruition and starts to manifest itself because of the power of the heart, of setting that intention and the impact that having such a strong and pure intention can have. So I thought that was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been also really but maybe doing. I've been holding that vibration, and it's not easy. It's an entertainment complex. It's artists. It's creatives. It's queer people who come from all kinds of backgrounds and maybe have been abused or traumatized in some ways, or don't believe in community even. Or I've seen it all, and I love them all. Right. And so I literally just sit back, and every time they come, a practice I've been doing, which is part of an embodiment practice, is I really sit back, and every time someone springs up, and everybody has their anxieties and everybody has their confusions or their art or whatever it is, and it's good and bad or whatever, or it's not even good or bad, it just is, right? And so I'm just
uncomfortable, neutral.
Yeah, just whatever, right? And I just sit there. I usually hug. It's usually a big hug first. And then I like consciously, and maybe this is woo, and I don't know if we should talk woo.
We lean into the woo.
All the woo.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, bring it.
I will like consciously go in to sort of my consciousness. I will go down to my heart. I somehow go through my heart into their eyes and down into their heart, which is very specific, I know. But then I imagine myself as them. Like 100%. I am them, right? And I say, wow, okay. So I probably had these experiences, and I might be going through this at home, and I might have da-da-da. And I just sit there, and I just make I feel compassion, no matter what it is. And they might be a billionaire, and I'll still feel compassion for whatever that experience must be like, and I'll get to the core of it. And then from there, no matter what they throw at me, I think I'm that person. How would I want to be treated right now? Or what do I need to hear to feel good? How do I, and I that's my practice. And it's every day, it's with everyone. And it's so for me, I have a ton of actual gratitude, because the Gifford House for me is like the deepest place of practice that I could have ever found in a really beautiful way. I don't know if that translates or if that makes sense. It's sort of like there's so much going on all the time and everything that it's like practice for me to be truthful and honest with integrity around that thing I wrote, that I want to hold this space. And that even if you have a goal in life and you get that goal, it doesn't mean that it's all roses, right? Like it's not rainbows and butterflies and everything's wonderful, and that it's all hard work. Yeah. Nothing in life is not hard work. Nothing in life, is like, oh, I made it and everything. No. There's always a process, always a journey. And just remembering that. And then also, on the hard days, just thinking like, no, I asked for this. And yeah.
It sounds like you're talking about when we mention like taking the yoga off the mat, right? Like there are places where we come and do these practices so that we can refine them or expand our capacity in them. But the real work then is bringing it into the day-to-day. So having conscious awareness in my day-to-day, having compassion in my day-to-day. And that's really what I'm hearing you talk about, like taking these skills and say, well, maybe I can do them on my meditation cushion or in my journal or on my mat, but can I do it when there's a deadline and the person in front of me like needs their money fast or they're upset, whatever the thing might be. And I think that's really an admirable thing for us all to strive at. Like, can I be a spiritual person when I am working through the world?
100%. So when I didn't think this was going to go forward years ago in another strange situation, I own some land in Costa Rica now, right? It's beautiful land. I was going to create a retreat center. I was going to go there and do all the woo and live like a very easy, simple life, much quiet, literally me sitting, meditating on the side of a hill. And I sat with that for a long time. And what kept coming up for me was, you're alive, you have greater impact, right? Like hold this, like do the hard work. We're not here to go sit on the side of a mountain and meditate. I mean, maybe some of us are, and that's wonderful and lovely, but I'm not in this life, right? And so in this life, it was like, nope, roll up your sleeves, dive in, you're good, I'm grounded, I'm okay, give and love and be love and show love and pull love out, right? And so it very much that practice of like, yeah, I could go and just sit and meditate and do it all inside. I do. Now, how do I do that for others? How do I show up?
Yeah. Right. How do I bring it to the world? Because it is hard work. Like, even sitting meditation can, to some people, be like the world's hardest job. Right? Like I would rather like do the hardest manual labor than sit still on my cushion.
Absolutely.
Right? I think it's very subjective. It's very contextual. And I think that there's room in the world for all sorts of practitioners and different ways of being a teacher and a leader and a guide. So like you said, in this manifestation of this life, right? This is your post. This is your post in life.
It's my post. Yeah. And I'm happy with that. And, I just did a Vipassana, and I would recommend a Vipassana to just about anyone with good knees.
And if not,
or a chair.
And if not, find a good chair.
Find a good chair.
Right, with some yoga blocks to lift up. Yeah.
But it was 10 days. And the interesting part of that is, the reason why I did a Vipassana is because this last season was, wow, like powerful. The business did, it was tons of events and tons of things going on and tons of energy all the time. And I just hold space. So if you've ever held a party, and you had some people over or whatever, it's like that, but 1,000 or 1,500 people, and they're in this building that you're responsible for. You're responsible for their health, wellness, benefit, and joy, and it's like, okay, which is fun and fine, and you get used to it, but it was a lot. And energetically for me, I need quiet to rejuvenate. And there is no time to process or quiet to rejuvenate. And so what I did midsummer, just about August, I like went online. Someone told me about a Vipassana, and I booked it for December, thinking like, oh my God, 10 days of silence without a phone is the ultimate luxury. Like I need that. And so all summer, what got me through is knowing that I was going to have this process time, and I ended up doing it, and it was one of the most difficult. It's sort of like learning how not to suffer through suffering, and it really helped me in a lot of ways, and so I do recommend that.
Where did you go?
I went to the Vipassana Meditation Center in Western Mass, it's through dharma.org, and you can book through any one of the 100.
Barry, Mass?
Yeah, it's close to Shelburne. Yeah.
So I went to their sister property, Spirit Rock, in August.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. So I love a Vipassana. Like,
loved it.
But I also I get really tempted sometimes of like being on retreat. I'm like, okay, I want to be here. This is the post that I want to take. I want to like live on a retreat center. I want to like be in retreat mode all the time. And then I realized I'm like, no. Like, I do believe my impact, I feel like similar to yours, like is going to be out in the world, right? Like my post right now is not going to be at a retreat center, even though I get so tempted every time I go. I'm like, oh, I just want this to be my life 24/7. Right. And then I try to figure out how do I incorporate it into my everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So one of the things we talked about earlier, or something that I heard you say was around maybe a limiting belief around rejection. And that feeling of rejection that might be coming from the banks or elsewhere. So I'm curious that like when the bank said, hey, we're willing to take a risk on you, and the Gifford House project began, like while this massive renovation project's happening, what were some of the other things that may have popped up for you that, started to challenge you of like, oh, is this possible? Can I do this?
The way it happened and where I was in my practice, it was ultimate surrender, I will just say. Now with that, it was surrender with, you better get it done because someone just believed in you. And this is for the town and it's not about me. It hasn't been about me, right? Like I don't generally post about myself. Like it's I believe in the project as a whole, and I'm really happy to be a leader sort of around it, to steer it more than lead it, right? To sort of like make sure it's safe almost. There were so many things that came up. I think one of the biggest challenges in the renovation was that I had 6 weeks. I had inherited a building that barely had Wi-Fi, that had never run a credit card, that had structural physical issues with the building, that hadn't been updated in 60 years, and anything, mattresses, anything, And so from an affordability standpoint, and there was obvious financial things that I took huge gambles and risks on that were well outside anything that I was ever comfortable with my own wallet. I mean, I've made decisions for large corporations, but I've never done it for myself, and it is different, it turns out. And I only had 6 weeks before the first guests were coming, and I had to renovate 18 bathrooms. I had to clean up, refresh a club. I had to repaint and refresh a bar. I think for me, the magic that existed as the Gifford House, I didn't want to lose that magic through my design, if that makes sense. Like, oh, I'm going to change this color, and because I say it's this color, everyone's going to love it. Like, there's some kind of magic to having a lot of people's creativity be a part of it, and a lot of people own it, and allow a lot of it to like change and morph. And so all I wanted to do, and my only goal, was to actually make it a little more basic, to be honest, so that we could have other people add their art and their visions and their things and sort of curate from that standpoint. But economically, it was a huge challenge. Getting contractors and the right people in, timing was the whole thing was a challenge.
It takes a lot of time, energy, and effort to make a blank canvas.
Yeah. And also, I went into it, one of the first things I did was create a moral compass for the project, which was like, it was 2 weeks. I didn't even know if I was going to get the project. And I started writing what we would do. Every time someone's hired, they would have to sign the paper that these are our like precepts of how we treat each other, what's expected, but not from you must move that there every night and clean that or whatever. It's like, who you're going to be when you walk in these walls, how you're going to treat people, accountability, responsibility, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And it matters because sometimes someone does something, I'm like, hey babe, number 4.
Yeah, and they're corporate values, right? Like
Basically.
that's the reason why we have corporate values in the first place, or is to really align people to like, hey, this is the way that we engage here, and we want to invite you and welcome you in, and like this is how we expect.
And I even took that a step further with guests and patrons. And so we even have sort of guidelines for, hey, when you step here, you're not stepping into just anywhere. This is a house, and these are our rules. You know, it's sort of the community's rules. Yeah.
So you spoke about your own personal practice and the way that you approached, and now you're talking about these precepts with your staff. Are there other, like, are you bringing in these sort of concepts and ideas with your staff? Is that part of the conversation you have with the people with whom you are creating the space and maintaining the space in the events?
Absolutely. And with everyone. And I'm constantly banging the drum of it in the background because very easily everybody comes from their place. Some people desire power, even within their own role. Some people desire all kinds of things, right? Without getting into it. And I just bang the drum like, hey babe, I'm over here picking up the cups as owner.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So like everybody help everybody here. This is what we do.
And what is the impact? We keep going back to impact. What is the impact you've seen in these individual people as they've been working with you in this conscious way?
Not to be emotional about it, but it's actually
free. We love emotions.
It's actually it inspires me to just keep going and keep going and keep going because the growth I have seen from some of the most beautiful people. I mean, I don't even know why I'm choked up right now, but I really am because they are absolutely incredible people. And they came and it was just going to be a job or whatever. And I have seen them test me. I have seen them test the space, test their peers, test everything. And they get the truth. Because I literally stand, and I tell them this too. I stand solid and straight. And they basically do this whole number around me, dancing, yelling, screaming, pointing, trying to, you know what I mean? And I just stand there. Are you done? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm still here. I haven't changed. I'm not going to change. And I love you. And then when they start to see and feel it, I think this is what's happening. At least I haven't necessarily asked them, but this is what it feels like, is they relax and they think they can be, it's trusted. I have the majority of my staff is from season 1, right? Which I don't know how often that happens in Provincetown. As a point of, it's not just words, but it's also actions. There were some staff that, because they're all now friends, right? We've kind of created like a family within this house, right? It's an interesting thing. I'm always calling everybody family, and even when staff move on, we have a hotel manager now who's moving on. She wants to get some education and everything, and I couldn't support it more. She's forever part of the house. If she ever needs anything, we're there for her, and she knows that. If she ever wanted to come back. If she don't want to come back, that's fine. I want to see her kids. I want to, it's like, it's become this really beautiful community thing. And that's all I want. That's like all I care about on my, if I'm being selfish or something, the rest of it doesn't really matter to me. You know what I mean? Like there were a million ways to make a buck or whatever. But in another example, the action's more than words. I heard some staff talking that they wanted to go on a trip. They were all thinking about it. They were tossing out Japan. They were tossing out Thailand. They were, whatever. And then when push came to shove in winter, they said, I'm not sure we feel comfortable like financially enough, especially with politics and things coming and whatever, and our housing situation, whatever it was. And I said, you know what? And I got a bunch of them tickets to go, and we're all going together, and we're going to go on this like huge tour together, and it's going to be almost 2 months. And it's like, and they're like my OGs who were with me from the start, and we're going to go, and we're going to have a great time, And I was like, when we go, I'm not your boss. We're going to go, we're going to have fun. Let's whatever, and so they know it's not just lip service. I don't have to do that. I don't know anyone else who ever has. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm sure someone has, but you get what I'm saying. It's, I mean it. I'm really proud of them. I love them. They know it. And it's not to say that everybody's perfect. It's not to say I'm perfect. I mess up all the time. Then they are also able to tell me, and then I'm like, oh, that's right. I got to autocorrect. Yeah, that's like, right.
Steve, number 4.
That's right.
Number
and I'm like,
Steve.
right, number four. And we laugh, Yeah.
Well, so I'm hearing this sort of loving, compassionate, trustable container that you've created with your staff, and I am wondering now, like in the future. So in your vision, like a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. It feels like it's part of your mission to bring that manner of engagement to not just your staff then, but to your patrons and to the community. Do you have a vision for that?
For taking it to that next level? Yeah.
Well, I'm curious to be like, what you just described is so beautiful. And I think it's what our community needs, this like trustability, this stability, and this like authentic honesty, truth. You've said truth a lot today. And thinking, you own a place where people come to gather. And you create art and offerings of all kinds, right? Yeah. How are you envisioning bringing that manner of engagement to the community that surrounds you?
So I think it's slow and steady. I think that trust is built over time. I think if to create community, an integral community, you have to be like sort of a leader of love. Right. It's not through words. Like no one's going to listen to this and believe me. It has to like be experienced. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you have to go there. You have to see it or feel it or be hugged, or be inspired to create your own art. Right. Because it's not like I'm even trying to heal or create wellness. In fact, the only thing I really want to do is create expansion of people. Right? It's like, come as you are, as broken as you are, or as well as you are, or whoever you are, and grow. Right? And so like, maybe you do want to get on stage. We now have 4 stages at Gifford House. When I got there was just the lobby, right? Like, which if you can call it a stage, it had a little piano. There's now one in Purgatory, one outside on the patio. The Wild, we've turned into a 100-seat black box theater. And we barely charge for entertainment if we charge, and it all depends on who the act is and where they're coming from and whatever. But for me, I want the entertainment dollars to go back to the entertainers. As long as we're making money from, the bar and the hotel, and we're floating and we're okay, then like art. So like even in the club, it can be one note. People can think it might be dark. People can think it's about things that aren't great for queer community. So I hear that, and then I say, okay, Josh Moths, get over here. Let's break that energy up. Outside, create a huge mural during the underwear party of whatever you want, And so now we're paying an artist, supporting a local artist. The people who are at this thing are now seeing art being created right before their eyes during a dance party. They're with their friends. They're just thinking differently. So for me, it's like, how can we like break the norm a little bit? Softly and quietly, so it's still cool, it's still something you want to do, it's not cheesy or like some, like I don't want to off-put anybody, right, by being too loud. But there is a part of me that the more comfortable I get, the little bit louder I want to be about the truth. I go back to that all the time, which is about love and authenticity and for each other and to stand up for each other and support each other. It's very simple, right? It's like, it's very simple when you really get down to it. It's just, and I want to see more of that in community. I want to see more of that in this community. And so I'll be it. I'll just be it. And people can believe it or not, but it's going to be consistent. And I might mess up, but then I will figure it back out, and it's my core.
I think it's so important to have models or people modeling genuine love without agenda. And I know, like myself as a young queer person, gay person, and a lot of the friends, it was hard to trust. And I could tell you so many stories when I was going through like living in New York City, and so what I'm hearing you say is creating a space of like trustable love. And I think it will take time for people to recognize that, because I think initially, if you've had decades of kind of looking over your shoulder or questioning like someone's authenticity, or like, do they want something from me? What is it they need? Like, is this a trap? It won't happen overnight. It won't. It's not a light switch. But I hear you, like, so slowly but surely, like
it's like a drum. It's like a little drum in the background. It's just like a quiet little, and I'm just like hitting the drum, and I'm like, no, I'm really serious. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, trust takes time, and it takes consistency, right? And from the examples that you've talked about, it's what I hear is true leadership. It's not just talking the talk, it's walking the walk. It's saying like, I am going to uphold these precepts. I'm going to lead with my own heart, right? And I'm going to put that out into the world. And if I'm veering off course, I want my staff, I want my project teammates to call me out. Because if they don't, the universe is going to.
Totally.
Right? Like something's going to come around and be like, no.
Every time.
Yeah.
But this is the importance of conscious community. We talk about it in yoga and in men's work all the time, like having, in men's work, we say steel sharpens steel. Like we need our brothers. In yoga, this like conscious community keeps you like tethered. We need that reflection because when we are practicing things like integrity, it isn't as if we could just decide like, I'm going to be perfectly in integrity all the time. I mean, we can try, right? But sometimes we need someone to reflect, hey, you're starting to like get close to that boundary. And that is also part of the practice. Thank you so much for helping me see something I couldn't see on my own.
Totally.
And then like now I can recalibrate if I choose to stay in integrity. It's so important. Our community and our trustable like colleagues that can say a harsh truth to it, not a harsh truth, a sharp truth, a sharp, loving, compassionate, heart-centered truth that allows us to move forward and keeps us in alignment. It's so important.
And so many leaders are not open to that reflection. It is like, do as I say. Like, we just had an episode come out about authentic power, right, in leadership. And like, there's so many leaders in today's world that like they refuse to accept or acknowledge that like they could be doing something wrong or off, right? Especially if it's coming from a subordinate, like heaven forbid, like somebody below you tries to tell you, and it's like
just ego.
It's ego.
It's all insecurity.
Yeah.
Anyone who's like actually grounded. I mean, I haven't mastered this, so I'm not saying I have, but the direction I want to go is, if you're not maintaining open and listening and being, then you're not leading either, right? Because it's you have to listen to everybody, and then if you still are opposed to it, there's a conversation of your truth, and if your truth doesn't convince them, then maybe you start at a middle ground, right? At a compromise between the two, so they feel heard, you feel heard. It's both seen. Instead of it being opposition, this is one thing I've learned, even with the boards in town, right? Or like, but honestly, you go before the historic board. I love everybody on the board. I love everybody on the planning board. Last night I went before the planning board because the town did a stop work notice on me on the back. So I was in high elevation. So it's something I just didn't realize or know. No problem, right? They were right. I was wrong, so we stopped. It stopped it for months. The hotel amenity never got out for this last year. I could be mad at that. I'm not. I don't care. So I go before the board yesterday. And it's all about whether it's a board or your staff or patrons, it's alignment, right? Everyone, what people don't realize when they're in conflict or resolution is that it's not me, what my needs are or your needs. If we are all one and I am you or whatever without going too woo, and there's what is the common goal? Because the common goal we can both fight for, and we can both get some of our needs met, and some of my needs is better than none, and digging my heels in and creating an enemy or what. It's like flow in a way of like find alignment and move forward. That for me has gotten me through so many obstacles or potential catastrophes, even with this project, is like really sitting and being like, hey board, as a town, we really need this to do well. In order for it to do well, it has to make money, and it's not right now making enough. And so if I need a little more money, what can I give you guys? And and what's the exchange? Like, how do we do this? And yeah.
You're talking about shared mission, it sounds like. And in this example, it's really sounding to me like you have a project, they have requirements or whatever. But if you can really land on, well, we both want the P-Town experience to be great.
Yeah.
Then you're like, from that place, any number of solutions are probably possible. And so that's what I feel like I'm hearing you say, that like find the shared mission.
Because if you find that shared mission, great. And if not, what you might be doing is you might be attaching to preference, right? And then welcome suffering, right? Like
cravings.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like if you have such an attachment to the outcome and you're unwilling, your heels are so dug in, like life is going to be hard.
Really hard.
It's going to be really hard for you, right? So like jump into the river, right? Start to flow. Let go of the banks and get into the middle of the river and let's go.
I've gotten that's been a hard practice for me, to be honest, because I do have so much energy. Like I don't even know how I don't know where it even comes from, but there's like such a force that I feel like comes through me sometimes, and I think that can be really off-putting to a lot of people, because if other people are content or want to go slow,
or if I'm super if I'm super closed, right, if I haven't done some opening work and I'm super closed, like that's going to be a put off for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, like I'm not going to be able to handle that energy, or it's not going to be the energy that I can like handle.
Can you speak more specifically, like what kind of energy would be tricky for you in that moment?
So like even talking about that with somebody that may be so open and so wanting to create joy and allow so many types of humanity to exist in one place. Like, you know, I've gone through my own personal relationship with the Gifford House, where I have, you know, been a drinker and a partier and a club kid, and I love going out and I love expressing myself. And there was a long time that it was one of my favorite places to be before you owned it, right? Like back when I was vacationing here, I loved going there. And then the first summer that I got sober, I loved going there because I was like, it was a place that I felt like I could like really like push myself and like be there. And like I would go to Fag Bash. I was a go-go dancer for James Sterney for a couple times. Like it was really like these were these were challenges to myself in my sobriety. And then last year I couldn't be there. This last summer I couldn't be there for whatever reason. The energy, I was not open enough anymore. I had closed off to that because that was no longer the truth of the experience that I was wanting. And I didn't think that I could bring my fullness anymore for some reason. And so when I experienced an energy like that, or when I had experienced an energy like that, I was like, I was too closed to be able to do it because I was too in my head. I was too in my head. I was too judgmental of myself, of others. And I still have work to do, of course, but I feel like I'm like getting to a point that I'm like willing to be open enough to it again.
So we're going back, is what you're saying. We're planning a trip.
Yeah.
To purgatory. The circle goes to purgatory.
To that, I love it because that's the exact. I love that journey, even with the Gifford House, right? Because that's what she does, and she's going to show you in some way without going too deep or making it whatever. It's like she's going to show you fun. She's going to show you maybe where you indulge too much, maybe where you need a little work, maybe where you're a little self-conscious, maybe, you know, whatever. And you're going to go on that journey. When I did the Vipassana, by day 4, I was planning, where do they have my cell phone locked up? I am breaking into that cabinet. They have my key and I am getting out of here. Like I was like mental because it was so difficult, right?
I'm impressed you made it to day 4. Usually day 2 for me.
But the amazing, But the amazing thing was by day 10, after the whole journey, I got it. I got the messages. I got the truth. I'm obsessed with it now. Now I'm like meditating every day, like in my own practice in a way that I wasn't able to before, whatever. But for the Gifford House, for you, it's perfect. And so what I'm trying to do in steering that ship a little is, one, you don't have to come for the club. We have Cody plays, and we now have trivia, and we
line dancing with Francis,
line dancing, and we're doing all these other things. That we have art classes and whatever, right?
The live drawing, and you know, I want to bring in yoga and meditation, all this other stuff, but also. I'm essentially sober, not through addiction, but it's just where I'm at right now. And I want a mocktail. So we just created a whole mocktail menu where if you come, you don't have to drink. It's not about consumption and poisoning your body. In fact, I really sat with myself before moving forward with this and with, because it's bad dharma for honesty. If you're any way involved in poisoning another person or allowing someone to be their worst self, it's on me, right? Like ultimately. And I kind of sit with that a lot. And that really, I almost didn't, the only reason why I didn't want to move, that was why I didn't want to move forward with this project, was the only reason at one point. I just didn't want to be a part of someone's, that cycle. But then what I realized is that I can like be like a little bit of a light bearer, even if people see or don't see me that way. And from their own experience, don't know me or whatever, and come up with their own story of me or whatever it is. I know
that in my heart of hearts, my intention is to be a little light bearer within that, and to show people that you can be a part of it and even come to a club night without poisoning yourself. And we have zero expectations of you to do any of that. And also, maybe you can see some of the queer magic and maybe you can make some beautiful connections, and maybe you can be a part of our community in a new way. I don't know. But I love that. I love that you have been on a journey with it, because I think that's the work, honestly.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Tim, do you have anything to add before?
Well, I just want to acknowledge you for this last season bringing a queer spirituality event to the Gifford House, and you and I have had conversations about bringing more of those things. I think it is so important. So, when we have this conversation about what the queer community needs, I don't necessarily think it's always like we have to eliminate these things that we say are bad, right? I just think sometimes it's like, can we bring up these other things and create balance and opportunity and possibility for our community so that they can get a little bit of everything, and living in that way. I feel like you're really contributing to that and creating the space for that to happen. So I just want to acknowledge that, because prior to this summer, I don't think I'd really seen a specifically queer spiritual event, and I was fortunate to be a small part of it. But I'm looking forward to being part of things moving forward, because I do think it's the medicine that our community needs. And I think especially now, as what's going to be happening in the world, we need to be creating these safe spaces and these conscious spaces and these mindful spaces and these healthy spaces and these opportunities for conversation. And it's not about not dancing or not going to a party, but it's about but are there other things too? Can we bring it all? Can we bring it all?
And to that, that was so eye-opening for me. I would say in 2024, what I was starting to see and what messages were coming up for me is that nature itself is queer, right? And you can't really stop nature, right? And so all these legislations and all these things, it's sort of, there's a part of my inner self that just sort of giggles, is constantly laughing at it. Wow, you're really trying to stop nature from being nature in a way that it will never be the future, will never be sustainable, will never anything. And it's our sort of duty, it's our sort of job to be our authentic selves and to show up in a beautiful form that we are. And what I got from that particular retreat for me, my God, we had chefs, we had graffiti artists, we had fire throwers, we had therapists. It just went on. We had wellness workers, and all the queer magic. What screamed out to me was how absolutely unique and brilliant we all are individually with our own superpowers. I know you had Phil Jimenez on this. I swear to God, we are the superheroes, in a weird way, not from a narcissistic ego standpoint, but it's baffling to me how magical and artistic and creative and unique. And no one had the same skill at this entire retreat as someone else. And we all were able to come together and share our offering. And that was really inspiring to me, and that I would like to dig into deeper and more over the next year.
Well, thank you for creating a space for it, and deep appreciation.
And for elevating multiple modalities, right? There's so many access points to spirituality. It could be dance. It could be the club. It could be the stage. It could be yoga, right?
Exactly.
Dancing was my first spiritual practice. Now, obviously, I'm talking about through concert dance, ballet, modern, performance. But I really believe it was my first spiritual practice. My first great teacher.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was funny with this project at the beginning of it, people were like, well, what are you going to do? It's a club, so you're an entertainment complex. So this is the note. This is your frequency. This is what I was like, no, the frequency of Gifford House is the full spectrum. It is the full spectrum. So don't expect or come or think or what, just experience. So thank you guys.
Beautiful. Really beautiful conversation today. We covered a lot of ground. We talked about leading with heart and the impact that can have of desiring and putting out to the universe the intention to create community with heart, and the power that can have, and how listening to the universe and signals can really manifest really beautiful things in our lives, and how leading by example can have a beautiful ripple effect in our world as well. So, Steve, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm feeling very complete. How about you guys?
I feel complete.
Very complete. Thank
All
you.
right. Tim, will you take us out?
Let's close our eyes. Take a deep inhale through the nose. Gentle exhale through the mouth. And it is with deep appreciation and gratitude for this sacred circle, for our community, this brotherhood, this conversation, any insights that we may have gained, explorations, awarenesses. And in this moment now, we release the spirits and we release the archetypes. And with these words, our container is open but not broken. Aho.
Uh-huh.